introduce Ismael Alvarez and how new. Ismael Alvarez is a biologist and epidemiologist, doctor in health science from the Public University of Navarra. After writing his thesis, he worked 2 years in the University of Navarra in the field of nutritional epidemiology. In November 2019, he joined the Spanish DILI registry in the University of Malaga. Jauniu is an economist and a statistician, also doctor in health science from the Public University of Navarra. She joined the Spanish DILI registry in February 2020. Both early career investigators lead the data and statistical analysis in the ongoing studies conducted in the center and explore novel approaches, analysis in the field of biostatistics and bioinformatics. When you can start when you're ready. How Ismael?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to share the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, thanks for introducing. Well, as Mercedes said, I am Ismael Alvarez, and here is my colleague, Jauniu, and we are going to present this seminar entitled Clinical Trials and Drug-Induced Liver Injury. What have we learned and where can we go? To complement the introduction, well, it's how it came from Beijing, and I am from Oviedo in the north of Spain. And well, we are not doing a short-term scientific mission, but a long-term scientific mission here in Malaga, in the south of Spain. Well, this seminar is in the framework of the Working Group 4, Design and Endpoints in Clinical DILI Investigation and Trials. And this working group is led by Professor Einar Björnsson from Iceland and Dr. Mercedes Robles and Dr. Yunidis Sanabria from Malaga, from Spain. Which are the aims of this working group? Well, it's to set the standards for clinical trials design and establish precise endpoints to assess the efficacy of novel interventions or for exploring novel biomarkers in DILI, and to define criteria and establish endpoints to measure efficacy on novel interventions in DILI.
And management of DILI consists on withdrawal of offending drugs and supportive care if the patient needs it. Some studies have reported the findings of some studies have approach tested in the past, like acetylcysteine or corticosteroids. However, most of these studies were based on limited number of patients are prevented to reach the short condition. Therefore, currently there is no specific therapy approved for treating DILI. So what have we learned? There is several challenges in studying of clinical trial in DILI. First, DILI is a complex condition with relatively low prevalence, which is difficult enrollment. In addition, there is a lack of a specific diagnostic test, and the future DILI is a disease that presents with a wide variety of heterogeneous manifestations. Due to this challenging framework, performing the clinical trials in DILI encounters many difficulties. We planned to conduct the first systematic review to summarize the design and findings of randomized clinical trials in prevention and management of idiosyncratic DILI and the non-acetaminophen DILI related acute liver failure. We identified eligible studies through the search in sex bibliographic database using the shown search strategy. To be included in this systematic review, studies have to fulfill some inclusion criteria. Be an article that presents original results of a randomized clinical trial carried out in humans. Describe the use of drugs or herbs in prevention or management of DILI, and shortly explain the methodology of the clinical trial. including conclusion and inclusion criteria, and treatment in the intervention and control arms, and the diagnostic definition of DILI. The quality of included study was evaluated in 7 domains based on Cochrane criteria: random sequence generation, allocation, constraint, blending to participant and personnel, blending to outcome assessment, incomplete outcome data, selective reporting, and other biases such as baseline imbalance, sample size estimation, and the use of intention to trait analysis. For each domain, the presence of high, low, or unclear or unknown of bias was adjusted.
Well, this is the flow chart of the comprehensive systematic review. We had identified over 2,000 studies in the database search, of which over 1,200, nearly 1,300 records were excluded due to be duplicates, and we screened the title and abstract of 955 articles. The vast majority of them were excluded due to be relevant to the current study or not fulfill the inclusion criteria. After that, we assessed 26 full-text articles for eligibility, and we exclude 14 of them after reviewing these articles. We further identified 10 additional studies from references, and lastly, we included 22 articles in the systematic review and meta-analysis. These are the main characteristics of the 22 studies included. Most of them, 21 of them, were conducted in Asian countries, mainly in China, and we only identified one clinical trial conducted in the United States of America. The pharmacological or herbal agents used in the prevention or management of DILI comprise silymarin, bicyclol, magnesium isoglycinate, L-carnitine, N-acetylcysteine, theophylline, and traditional Chinese medicines. Only 4 of these agents were authorized in the European Union: silymarin, L-carnitine, and acetylcysteine and theophylline, while bicyclol and magnesium isoglycinate, and of course traditional Chinese medicines, are only authorized in China. This is the quality assessment performed with the 7 quality domains defined by the Cochrane review. Only one study from Thailand, here, Luang Sotiri et al., showed a low risk of bias across the 7 domains, while the remaining studies showed some methodological bias or disadvantages. Most of the studies describe the randomization method, but notably only 2 of the 22 studies describe the allocation concealment. 8 studies, nearly 1/3 of the included studies, were double-blind, while the remaining were open label studies or did not describe the blinding, so they were like unclear blinding. Sample size estimation was defined in 40% of the included articles, and only 18% of the articles describe an intention to treat analysis in their statistical section. Only one trial was performed in pediatric population, and we find 2 main methodological flaws. There was a great heterogeneity in the DILI case definition. Only 2 papers used the current criteria, the most accepted criteria defined by the expert consensus group in 2011, while other studies use less strict criteria, from 1.25 elevations, the upper limit of normality in the liver enzymes. And there was also a heterogeneity in the efficacy criteria, but the main criteria were DILI incidence for the prevention trials and normalization of liver enzymes in the management trials. We pooled the efficacy of each pharmacological or herbal agent identified, and here are the results. For example, for Silimarin, where we identified 6 studies in the prevention arm, we did not see any evidence of lower incidence in those patients who were treated with Silimarin compared to those who were allocated in the control arm. I refer to the control arm because some of these studies compared Silimarin against a placebo or against other agents. In 2 studies testing the efficacy of bicyclol in the prevention of DILI, they found this compound could be effective in preventing DILI, but well, the evidence is only based in 2 studies, so it's very difficult to reach a solid conclusion with this small sample size. Neither magnesium isoglycerinate or L-carnitine showed any efficacy in preventing DILI, and 1 study using thiopronin showed efficacy in preventing DILI as well as N-acetylcysteine. Remarkably, this last study of Baniasadi was performed on people who were aged 60 years or older, so the results may not be generalized to the whole population. In the DILI management, we found that Silimarin did not have any beneficial effect in the management of DILI, but it should be noted that this study from Asghari and colleagues was the study performed in pediatric population. And again, these are the findings from 1 study, and it should not be generalized. With regard of magnesium isoglycerinate, the Chinese study from Wang et al., one of the high-quality studies included in this meta-analysis, found that high or low dose of magnesium isoglycerinate was effective in ALT normalization, in reaching an ALT normalization, and the pooled results showed that magnesium isoglycerinate could be a candidate for DILI management. In the same line, 2 studies with bicyclol were included, and the pooled results showed that bicyclol has a promising, at least promising, effect in normalization of liver parameters. But again, these 2 articles, the control arm were not placebo. The patients received 2 different compounds to compare with bicyclol. So further studies would be needed to reach solid conclusions in this term. And then the 2 traditional Chinese medicines, Xue Bijin and Jin Yuan, were not effective in the management of DILI. Very remarkably, the effectiveness of NAC in improving the survival in DILI-related acute liver failure was not found in this meta-analysis. We only included two randomized clinical trials, one from India, from Navi, and the other one from the acute liver failure study group from Lee. After this meta-analysis was published, I can recall there is another trial who was published. So maybe these results need to be updated in the future in another meta-analysis. And here are the pooled effects of the other events with these pharmacological or herbal agents. Neither the Silimarin or magnesium or bicyclol showed any relationship with a higher rate of adverse events. And the traditional Chinese medicine, Jin Yuan, also did not show any any association with a higher rate of adverse events. What are the main conclusions that we reach after performing this analysis? Well, some like take-home messages could be like there is a great heterogeneity in DILI case qualification, which is confounded by low thresholds. As I said, only two studies use the most accepted DILI criteria, and only four studies used a causality assessment scale to help in the diagnosis of DILI. Also, there was a great heterogeneity in the definition of endpoints who were not clinically robust, and many of the studies showed methodological flaws. Also, the analyzed clinical trials demonstrated limited efficacy of the specific interventions. And altogether, this highlights the need of a multicentric randomized clinical trial in DILI to test both known and novel interventions. And it should be very, very needed to build or to perform a clinical trial within the framework of an adaptive design with precise endpoints, an adequate sample size, and monitoring plans. All of this within including investigators from a clinical and basic investigation and multidisciplinary teams to account for all these drawbacks and methodological flaws that we have described.
And these findings were published in Pharmacological Research Journal, one of the top journals in clinical pharmacological field. Now we have presented the findings of a systematic review that highlights the room for improvement in the conduct of clinical trial in DILI. Therefore, where can we go in the future? The lessons learned from this course action encourage us to plan to set up a clinical trial in DILI. This course action has established strong links between many research groups on DILI. Therefore, there is an opportunity to set up a multi-center randomized clinical trial at the highlight quality level, overcoming the limitation described in the systematic review. It would be crucial to work in a standardized methodology in terms of recruitment, diagnostic criteria, sample collection, follow-up, and data analysis. Indeed, there is a possibility of applying for future European funding to perform this ambitious plan. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hao and Ismael. This is a very interesting work. I have a question for you. It's very important to design a clinical trial, a well-designed clinical trial to evaluate a drug in treatment or for treatment or prevention of DILI. But based on the finding of your work, what drug would you try in a clinical trial? Do you think we should try perhaps more than one drug at the same time? Perhaps only one drug with placebo? What drug would you use? What drug has shown higher effectiveness in the decrease in transaminases after DILI?
Yeah, well, it's a difficult question because many of these compounds are not authorized in the European Union, but based on what agents are authorized here and based on the availability, I will suggest to use silymarin, to test silymarin efficacy, both in maybe prevention and management of DILI. In prevention, there are like 6 trials, so maybe this is the first step to perform with silymarin. And the question is, what should we include in the control arm? maybe to test with another, but there are no defined treatment for DILI. So not placebo, but maybe, I don't know, corticosteroids or another empirical use treatment to test the efficacy of both arms could be a right approach.
But Silimarin is not has not very good results in management of DILI, isn't it?
In management, there was only one trial with pediatric and no trials in adult population, for example. Mm-hmm. The other trial, which has no results, did not measure the normalization, but the hospitalization duration. And it showed like, that's why there was no figure in the slide. But if I can recall correctly, they showed that there was shorter hospitalization duration when people were treated with Silimarin. So maybe, as I said, due to the authorization in the European Union and maybe an easy availability of the agent, it could be the first approach.
However, perhaps the control group could be placebo, because we have not other. I think a control group of placebo would be the best way to evaluate the real effect of what drug. I think
maybe as a first step, it should be the better approach. And maybe if you see the efficacy of Silimarin, you can compare with other empirical treatments that are used currently in the management of DILI.
Yeah, I think the quality of the studies you have included in the meta-analysis prevent to include other drugs which perhaps could be interesting also in DILI. Perhaps, for example, ursodeoxycholic acid has been studied, but in DILI, but the quality of the studies didn't meet the criteria to include in this analysis. Mm-hmm. But some studies have shown perhaps could be also another drug to try, no?
It's well, we were surprised because, as you said, ursodeoxycholic acid is commonly used in the management of DILI, but there were no, or at least in our systematic review with the terms used, there were no trials with ursodeoxycholic acid identified. I know that there are some trials, but we didn't identify them with the search terms. Maybe it's a limitation of the study, but it's also an inherent limitation when you perform a systematic review that sometimes you miss some studies.
And occurs the same with the corticosteroids, isn't it?
No, there are no clinical trials with corticosteroids up to now. No.
Okay. There are the two more drugs to try, perhaps. No, it's a very interesting study.
This is a field to explore. This is a field to explore.
Yes, I don't know if someone want to make any question.
I will. Hi, everybody. I was wondering about Silimarin, because Silimarin is commercialized in Europe as Silibin. It's usually used for patients with liver steatosis. But I don't know about the dosage, if the dosage is the same used in those trials. And sometimes trying to do something Ismael and how did, I found some difficult about very large heterogeneity on dosage of Silimarin within different clinical trials. So the effect cannot be correct measured. I don't know what I think about this.
Yeah, we both agree with you that dosage is of course a crucial measure to take into account when you are performing a clinical trial, and it difficults the comparison across studies. If we can recall correctly, I think it was like 150 grams 3 times a day. I think it was like the standard dosage in most of the studies, not all, but it was like 450 grams per day.
I don't know if it's the same dosage that it's used within the silibin, because silibin is based on silimarin.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's the same agent. Yeah, because it has several names. It's like silimarin, silibin, milk thistle. It has different names, but I think it's the same agent, the same compound.
Yes, it's used as supplement, you know.
Yeah. But here in Spain or in the European Union, I think it's authorized.
I think yes. In Italy is used. In Italy is used for liver steatosis. It's commonly used. Everybody used.
And I think in the summary product information from the European Union, from DEMA, sorry, I think it's also used for hepatotoxicity episodes.
Yes, but
I have to check that information.
I don't think there is some information in a European study, because I already tried to check that.
Yeah, let me check.
Included in the study, we have
okay, let me check, because we have a table with the authorization and the toxic liver damage. Yeah, it's authorized for toxic liver damage in the European Union. I can confirm that information.
Given intravenously, it has always been a treatment for the Amanita phalloides poisoning intravenously. I think silibin is the active ingredient. So as Anna has pointed out, there might be differences across countries with regard to the formulation or the presentation of the compound. So that's something that obviously has to be very much taken into account, yes. But corticosteroids, I think it will be a very good idea to test, as many of some of the cases of drug-induced liver injury do have hypersensitivity features, and because we know that the immune system is playing a role in the disease. I don't know, Mercedes, if you want to talk, because we are just approaching the end, if you want to talk about the frontiers research topic that this working group for is leading.
Yes, this working group are working, Anna, you are also working on it, in a review, systematic reviews about different treatment for DILI prevention and for DILI treatment. It's not as, for example, I'm with Einar Björnsson and Lana Nesbitt, another colleague of the working group, are writing about the role of ursodeoxycholic acid, for example. The quality of the studies are not have not the same criteria than you have selected in your meta-analysis. So this is the reason I have selected other different studies, and most of them, for example, talk about benefits in the level of transaminases during the treatment with ursodeoxycholic acid. This is true. There are 2 studies which don't show benefits with ursodeoxycholic acid. Other colleagues are doing a review about N-acetylcysteine, no? Alicata, and other drugs, corticosteroids, Einar Björnsson, And I think this is your work, Ismaeli and how and the other systematics review we are doing will be a very good tool to help us to design a clinical trial, because this is our aim, to design a clinical trial. But at the moment, I don't think what drug we should choose, because there are some drugs that show or seems to show a partial benefit, but it's very difficult because DILI is very heterogeneous. It could be very mild, it could be very severe, and people of all the range of age with another pathology, underlying pathologies. So there is going to be a very big heterogeneity in the people who develop DILI. And DILI is not a very frequent pathology. So we need an international effort with a lot of centers working on it, and to include the higher number of patients we can to try. But if we use different drugs to try, we need much more patients. So it's very difficult to choose only one drug to try. But I don't know, really, I don't know what would be the best strategy to design the clinical trial. I know, Anna, if you want to say something about what is your opinion.
I agree with you, Mercedes. It's very difficult to choose a drug to design a clinical trial on DILI for a heterogeneity of a subject who go within DILI, and heterogeneity also of the liver and the immune system and the different drugs. UDCA has been used for a long time empirically in many people who develop increase or raise of aminotransferases, and sometimes with some result, but there are no standardized results. So I think it's we need the whole people working on DILI need to design, did some answer from the research that we did in the past to obtain some results. But I guess it's really, really difficult to design a trial. And the reasons for who they guys were very, very good, the research on meta-analysis, and the study were all the most, I guess, all except one were all Chinese study from ASEAN. It's correct. Just one study was from Europe, from America.
Yeah, that's right.
And they talk all about herbal supplement, except one study was about acetylcysteine. So it's very, I think this concept express the real difficulty that we have found until now to design a clinical trial on the drugs used for DILI, because we don't have it. It's difficult also found placebo, or usually you measure against the standard of care, but we don't have still now a standard of care for DILI. Maribel, do you agree?
Fully agree, Anna. It's true that, but I think that we can design a clinical trial, and the shortcoming will be to get enough patients, but very well qualified patients, and with, as Mercedes was pointing out, with similar characteristics in severity or type of drugs, type of injury. But as we have a big network, I think it could be possible in an adaptive way, and to be able also to collect biological samples and to get the basic guys, the basic thing and biomarkers be tested in this population. So that will be really a good outcome of this cost action, and also to define properly the population. But with regard to the frontiers research topic, what I was wondering if that we could open this to any of you who will be willing to contribute to this research topic with any original research or review article or systematic review as they have been considering. You can just contact Mercedes and she will give you the opportunity and the instructions how to move forward on this possibility. So I encourage any of you to contribute to this research topic if you are interested.
Currently,
Yes.
Sorry.
Just a comment.
Yes.
Yes, just a comment with regard to the design of a clinical trial. I think an important limitation to do not forget is the fact that the timing of inclusion is going to be difficult in patients with DILI, because you need some time for exclusion of alternative causes, and this may lead to important differences in the timing of inclusion. So we will need to be very, very strict in the definition of DILI for the inclusion in patients, for the inclusion of patients in the clinical trial. So it's just a brief comment.
About clinical frontiers in pharmacology, currently the date to send the articles is the 30th of September, but we can move it to give more time to send the studies. This is a topic open for everybody, but if the study is done by cost members, is also funding by the cost. So it is a good thing to do to increase the knowledge about these topics, treatment and prevention in DILI. So you are all invited. If you need more time, if you are interested, we can move the dates to send the articles.
Harsha is attending this meeting. Would you like to make any comment?
Yeah, thank you, Maribel. I enjoyed the topic. You know, as you have mentioned, there's too much of heterogeneity in patients with drug-induced liver injury. But what I always found interesting with regard to our population was the sheer size and the scale of antituberculous drug-induced liver injury. And I always wondered why we have not tried N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine is easily available. It's relatively very cheap and very easy to give. From personal experience, I can tell you that when we see patients with severe antituberculous drug-induced liver injury, especially with the raised INR and raised bilirubin, it really does work. But you know, we are all clinicians. We have so much of other responsibilities. So I have never been taken it one step ahead to do a clinical trial. What I did was a few years ago, perhaps about 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, there was I did review the research that came from South Africa, and they set out to do a big trial on N-acetylcysteine in antituberculous drug-induced liver injury, and I always look forward to their results. But unfortunately, that trial I think never materialized. So that's one I think that is potentially doable. But I think these trials have to be done. They perhaps have to be done in Asian countries, because the sheer size and the load of tuberculosis in these patients. And second, as you and you just alluded to in your initial discussion, there is an element of hypersensitivity in many patients who have drug-induced liver injury. So a good trial would be to at least give steroids versus ursodeoxycholic acid, or perhaps steroids versus placebo in those patients who have some or few, or at least a few elements of hypersensitivity, and see. And I have, my gut feeling is that patients who have hypersensitivity and receive steroids actually do much better than those who do not receive steroid. But I think we need to do a formal study on that.
Yeah, yes, totally agree. We need to do that to have evidence on that. Yes, and it's a must. We need to do that. So that's why coming together, I think we will be able to make a proper design. And as you said, as you have just mentioned, N-acetylcysteine was tested also in idiosyncratic DILI by Lee, no? William Lee. They did not find, I think they did find positive results in idiosyncratic DILI when it was administered very early in the disease. So I think, as you said, it's a very easy, it's available all over the world, easy to administer. So it should worth a try, of course. Yes, very interesting. Thank you, Harrison.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
Ali, do you want to say anything from Turkey?
Thank you.
Well, I think we are over time, no? Javier, if you want.
Okay, we are just like almost done with the time, but it's been a really interesting today's seminar with from the clinical point of view and from the world from the work package 4, which is really nicely developing. So and I just want to wish you a very nice summer to every one of you, and then we will come back in September with another interesting seminar led by Goran Volkan, and we will send you the details very soon. So I think we can just wish you a nice summer and wait for the next seminar.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice to see you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Also for me,
Thank you.
happy nice
Grazie.
summer.
Okay.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, Anna.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.